We'll do that. Greetings, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Good evening. Let's establish we have a quorum, please, beginning with a roll call vote. Joe.
Here.
Corby.
Here.
John.
Here.
Meredith. Here. Christopher.
Here.
Juan Carlos.
Here.
And I am here as well. We do have a quorum. Corby, has this meeting been properly noticed?
It has.
Thank you. To help ensure that we're centering our board work around our shared values and serving our students, we begin each of our board meetings by reading our district's equity framework and the Ho-Chunk Land Acknowledgement, which can be found at the top of your agenda. Corby, would you please be willing to read those for us tonight?
Absolutely. In the Verona Area School District, our mission is that each student will acquire the knowledge and skills necessary to achieve their personal goals, thrive in a diverse global society, and lead a healthy, self-fulfilling life. To meet this mission, the Verona Area School District will ensure that every individual has access to the educational, social, and emotional support they need to feel valued and affirmed in their unique identities and experiences. We acknowledge that inequities and power dynamics exist in our system, such that some individuals, on the basis of their identities, face barriers to accessing the opportunities they need to experience success. In acknowledgement of such, the Verona Area School District is committed to disrupting these systems of inequity. The Ho-Chunk Land Acknowledgement reads, there are currently 12 tribal nations who call Wisconsin home, with the Ho-Chunk Nation being the primary group living around Madison. No matter where you are in the state, you are on the ancestral land of a tribal nation. As we begin our meeting, we honor the land upon which we stand.
Thanks, Corby. Board members, drawing your attention to the rest of tonight's agenda. I'd accept a motion to approve if there are no amendments or additions.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Christopher. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. All those in favor of approving tonight's agenda signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the agenda has been approved. So our first piece of the evening, which we often do, is staff recognition or student recognition. And tonight we get to honor Dr. Clarity, and we have some esteemed guests with us, Mike Baer and Diane Hesselbein, representatives in our state legislature. Welcome, we appreciate you being here, and I'll turn things over to you two.
Great.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for the invite and time, Jen, appreciate that. We were just having a couple of conversations with you all walking in, recognize it's a difficult time in the community, in the country, in our state, and trying our best to focus on positives here tonight, which we have one big positive, one great positive for our community, Dr. Clarity, who recently was awarded the State Superintendent of the Year for the state of Wisconsin. So congratulations to you. And we're very happy to be able to join with everyone to say thank you on behalf of the community and me as a parent in this district for the work that you've done, and with the whole team on the board and all the staff and folks to provide a welcoming, warm, safe, educational place for our kids to go every day. That makes me feel good as a parent, and I know our community is proud of all the things that you've accomplished and the team has accomplished under your direction. So I'm grateful, I'm thankful, and
ditto, you're all doing a great job. I've told some people I started serving on the Middleton Cross Plains Area School District 2005, 2008. I know this is such a team effort, and you do a great job, and I really just appreciate all your hard work. It really makes a difference. And you never know the places you'll go or the places these kids are going to go, and it's exciting to think about those opportunities in the future.
So we have a citation by the state legislature to offer to Dr. Clarity. So can we read this then?
Please.
You want to read it?
I
We
did
can
the
do
last
paragraphs.
one. All right, sounds good.
We'll switch off paragraphs. Okay. Go ahead, you can start.
Whereas Dr. Tremaine Clarity is superintendent of the Verona Area School District, where his leadership has improved student outcomes and strengthened community engagement.
And whereas over his 27 years, wow, wouldn't that guess that? Okay, sorry, that wasn't- of experience in K-12 education, enrolled as adjunct professor at Edgewood College. Dr. Clarity leads with a vision of education equity and prioritized investments towards student success. And
whereas under Dr. Clary's leadership, the Verona Area School District has shown outstanding achievements with graduation rates, advanced placement participation, and attendance surpassing Wisconsin state averages. And
whereas Dr. Clarity has shown his dedication to the advancement of high-quality education by establishing superintendent advisory councils and advocating for early childhood education, student safety, and student mental health resources. And
whereas Dr. Clarity has been named the 2026 Wisconsin Superintendent of the Year, the most prestigious honor that can be given to a school system leader in the state. Now,
might be able to do it. Okay. Therefore, Senator Diane Hasselbein and Representative Mike Baer, on behalf of the Wisconsin State Legislature, recognize Dr. Tremaine Clarity as the 2026 Wisconsin Superintendent of the Year and commend him on his commitment to the future of Wisconsin learners and communities. On behalf of the state of Wisconsin, congratulations.
Yeah. Well, there we go. Do the picture right there.
is that all right?
Yeah, it's great.
Can you take my place? You know, it's worth it. All the time. And that's that. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We appreciate you too taking the time. Another accolade, well deserved, Dr. Clarity. It's been fun celebrating you these past few weeks.
Yeah, I set another piece of paper for the wall.
No,
It's a lot to be proud of.
if I could, and I know it says my name on there, and I appreciate it, but when you talked about the collective of the work that we do together, the work of the team, the work of our community, our staff, we have, outstanding staff in the Verona Area School District. So I really want to uphold them and the work that they do in our classrooms and make sure that they observe this recognition as theirs too. But thank you both for being here today. It's really, really been an honor. Sometimes it's hard to accept awards, and I'm not great at it, but I'm really appreciative of being able to represent the Verona Area School District with pride and kind of put us on the map for great things across the state of Wisconsin. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Let us know how we can be helpful.
Absolutely.
Privilege for us to represent this district and the students too. We've had, in the last 2 weeks, we've had the FLCC students, I think they have that right, with the red coats.
Yes.
They came in talking in group of 4, they were fantastic. And the New Century kids were in, a whole big group back in December, and one of Joe's kids along for that ride. They won 3 recesses, by the way. Anchoring the future voters, if I didn't share that.
They really do. They
Yeah.
really want us to write something up.
So we've got some good young advocates, and appreciate that. Getting them civically engaged is important, so. Doing a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, appreciate it. Always good to start the meeting with celebrations and recognitions. And now we'll move into our superintendent's report. So first up is Act 42, wireless communication devices. Nate, thanks for joining us.
Exactly first.
So today we get to talk about the cell phone ban across the state. But yeah, in all seriousness, Act 42 in 2025 is a pretty straightforward law. For today's presentation, I really just wanted to quickly walk the board through what the law actually requires, what some of the things that our building leaders are saying about the cell phone culture and what might be critical in our buildings, and then leave some space for board discussion. So 2025 Act 42 requires that school districts have a policy prohibiting the use of wireless communication devices by July of this year. The policy defines wireless communication devices as those specific 4 things, but also allows for an opportunity for a school district to add more things to this list. So it asks us to ban cell phones, tablet computers, laptop computers, and gaming devices. It also demands that school districts create exceptions for health, safety, and students' disability-related needs. The key part about this statute is that it's pretty much acting as a floor for a cell phone or wireless communication ban in schools, but allows for school districts to go further than what the law actually demands. For example, a school district can define what instructional time actually is, and it can be more restrictive than another school district, or they can add to this list of wireless communication devices and make it longer, increasing the list of things that would be banned during instructional time in the school district. At a recent principals meeting, I had a chance to talk with some of our building leaders about this law and kind of just the overall cell phone culture in their buildings. And these are some of the things that they identified as critical. One, they generally support limiting wireless communication devices during the school day. They think that limiting those devices during the school day supports instruction and helps improve the school culture. Two, they think that off and away is good, but not necessarily sufficient without some more like clear district definitions. Like when we say devices need to be off and away, where is away? Is away in your pocket? Is away in your backpack? Or in those like, I think, little used lockers in the school district? Is that also away? And then also, what should be considered instructional time? Is it bell to bell from like 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. in the building? Or is it the actual time that schools or that teachers are delivering direct instruction in their classrooms? Or is it something in between? Those district leaders also stressed consistency as a top priority, saying that students should be able to go through Sugar Creek, Baton Ridge, and the high school, kind of experiencing like similar cell phone expectations, and not necessarily being surprised as they move on to the next grade level. And then finally, clear guidance on those exceptions would be needed. If we're going to say that we're going to add the use of a wireless communication device into a student's IEP or 504 plan, our staff are wanting language and kind of guidance in terms of the best way to structure it to support students, but then also maintain an orderly class environment. So I told you today that was going to be a short presentation. In terms of next steps, the district administration will have to update Administrative Rule 533 to be compliant with Act 42, but then also to remain aligned with OE 10. This update of the administrative rule will be informed by some of what our building leaders have said, some of what I think Dr. Clarity's been collecting in his staff and student advisory meetings, and then also what the board believes would be appropriate for cell phone ban or wireless communication ban. So tonight's discussion, I'm hoping the board is willing to have, will help shape kind of what that administrative rule becomes. And I have these optional guiding questions that we can use, or you all can just ignore them and just tell me what you think. These guiding questions include, like I mentioned before, what does away mean? What should instructional time mean in our policy? How important is uniformity versus building flexibility? And what are you hearing from your constituents in terms of this cell phone ban or wireless communications in schools? And then finally, what should the role of schools be in teaching responsible device use? We already kind of have set up in our school district teaching responsible device use for like student Chromebooks and district devices. Students kind of know like, okay, this is a school device, I should be using it for school work. What role should we play in teaching students responsible use of their own personal devices? So with that, I'll turn it over to the school board. If you have any questions, comments, concerns?
Who wants to go first?
I know,
I'll
right?
jump right in. I like the question about what should away mean, because that's a perfect example of how simple it is to say, well, like away means like that it's simply like it's in your pocket or it's out of sight, it's not distracting you. But that's not really a governable thing. If I, recall being in a classroom, like that would be a really hard thing to monitor. It'd take a lot of teacher energy to be constantly like observing and then having interactions about whether or not you're viewing your phone or if it's actually away. So I think that's a really good question, like from the standpoint of like, it makes common sense to just say, yeah, put it in your pocket. But we also have to be mindful of like, how much are we taking away from teachers being able to teach by setting a rule that is actually hard to observe and then enforce. And so like away might mean more away somewhere else, So there's a clear line and a teacher doesn't have to be checking all the time. I'm not suggesting an answer to that. That's a good question.
Nate,
Perfect.
I was curious, I had a conversation about this with somebody whose opinion I value greatly, who was here not too terribly long ago. And he was sharing with me that virtually every teacher has a policy about cell phone use and was wondering, what are we trying to accomplish? And I said compliance with the law. And he's like, okay, in that case, it should be off and away and off your person. And however a teacher wants to implement that, is that in your backpack? That's off your body, that's off your person. If it's he said most, a lot of teachers have like the cell phone hotels, previously they did, I assume it hasn't been so long. He's like, they do a great job of managing it. If this is now to ensure that they aren't having to police that makes great sense. So off your body in a way is, as long as it's not on you, not in a pocket, it's in a backpack, or it's in a cell phone hotel. But he was also saying, are we trying to model cell phone use or social dynamics? And I thought that was an interesting question because I would say they go hand in hand, and I think sometimes they don't. Anyway, my question, I guess, as I'm coming around to this is, what are our teachers saying? I mean, I would imagine they would like consistency, so one person isn't being like out on a limb having a strict policy, but I assume there's cell phone policies in each classroom, and wouldn't the teacher be the best judge of what instructional time is?
Yeah, I can jump in on that because especially the component of the voices of our staff through the staff advisory. And I also simultaneously got it from the family advisory as well as the student advisory as well. But to your point with the staff advisory, yes, there's a desire to have consistency and I think just more consistency across the building, not just space to space, because you could be saying like, well, I have very strict cell phone, and then I can go to the next one. Well, Mrs. or Mr. So-and-so doesn't enforce it that way, so it makes it hard to have credibility from spot to spot. Similarly, we've heard from our students that having different expectations in different spaces causes issues as well. So while I think to a point students aren't necessarily overly fond of it, they understand why we're doing it and do it, admit that it causes a distraction. But to their point, if you're going to do this, it needs to be consistent no matter which classroom environment that you're going to be in. So it's a building expectation, not an individual space expectation.
So if we're talking to staff and we're trying to set, I don't want staff to have to utilize their time to enforce a policy.
Correct.
And because I think that puts everybody in a, and my understanding is that using devices, there's like an appropriate use for devices in classrooms, and that's going to depend on which subject really you're in. There's different uses for each. Different staff members are going to have different, abilities to utilize technology in a way that should be fostered. How do we manage that? And is that even up to the board to define?
Yeah, that piece of it, we're able to put the language in that classroom-based activities can be acceptable under the policy that's created or the administrative code that's created. I think it's specifically differentiating between like the devices that we give out in terms of that use, or possibly the calculators that we use in some of our higher advanced math classes and things like that. So those are going to be expected usages. When you're talking about me just simply having a cell phone next to me that's mine, that's not attached to a classroom, that should not be part of the classroom environment, I think is the heart or the spirit of what the desired policy is going to get at, and the spirit of the vast majority of staff and students are looking to have consistency around, not the work device.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
The law does require that we actually spell out what those exceptions would be in terms of like authorized educational use. So that's something that our building leaders ask for too, that if we're going to have these exceptions for a teacher that wants to use a Kahoot to do a social studies review or something of that sort, that we lay out procedures to make sure that that teacher isn't accidentally stepping over or on some policy.
And just on that topic, I'd say from my own experience of hearing from my teenager, there is sometimes, I think, a default because it's easier to have the kids do something on their cell phone that could be done on their Chromebooks that honestly, as a district, we pay a lot of money to make sure every kid has one of these so that it's equitable and everybody has the same thing. That I think that it would go a long way if we set a standardized policy across the district that discourages use of students' personal devices for education unless absolutely necessary. And I can't even off the top of my head think of something the Chromebook stand can't do. But I'm not a teacher, so
I totally agree with the distraction. My one and only concern is having that direct line to parents, in emergency situations. What's the thought on that? I'm sure we've thought about that, right?
So we still provide, in the circumstances now when the phone's not available, even to our young ones that need access to parents, his office or classroom phone or going to a counselor space to allow that conversation to take place. And you want the privacy piece of it anyway. So in emergency situations, the staff member is not going to stop that from happening in those areas. But I don't think it overrides the need to have a policy in place that is overall to prevent the distractions that happen. And even with the implementation of policies that have been, or practices and not really policies yet, procedures that are in place, we can see decreases in classroom disruption now. I just think we want it to be more consistent across all of our spaces.
What considerations are there as we have grappled with this for so long with the away idea in terms of what away means for liability for the district? If we have phones away, at what point is there gray area of now something happened to my kid's phone and it's your fault because you made them put it away?
Yeah, and if we were to go that route and kind of, push cell phone hotels or push to students to put their phones in their lockers, and we'd also have to kind of cover ourselves on the liability too, in the sense that we might push out communication to families saying hey, bring your cell phone at your own risk. I know these seem to be things that students feel really attached to, and it might be unthinkable for them, but that we make reasonable assurances to protect their devices and their property, but similar to if you were to bring a notebook to school and it gets stolen at school, the district would help you try and find the notebook and remedy it, but you wouldn't necessarily replace the notebook.
I like that idea. I mean, a lot of teachers for me have shared that the distractions pretty disruptive to the classroom. And I think the data shows that having your phone on you just impacts cognitive capacity, right? And so the goal is to make sure that kids are showing up 100%. For allowing distractions, they're not showing up 100%. So for me, I'm pulling of away, not even feeling it in your backpack, because that's also a distraction. You're worried about my phone just went off, I get that ding, that text. That's my feeling. That's, I think, what the data shows. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the data shows behind cognitive capacity and how the phones impact learning during the day. And then the second, I think we should definitely shift the burden of enforcement, make it standardized, because the teacher shouldn't be a bad guy. There shouldn't be, oh my God, my fourth grade teacher is way cooler, lets me have my cell phone anytime. My sixth grade teacher sucked. Why? Oh, because she didn't let me have my cell phone. If we create that problem, that's something we can easily avoid. So my perspective is avoiding drama, making it a district-wide policy so it's consistent, and following the data of what's going to optimize just attention and cognitive capacity in the classroom.
I firmly feel that we need consistency as well. I just know how distracting I am with my cell phone. I have a hard time managing it. So I think if we could also think about kind of the longer term, I mean, they're not going away. These aren't going away. How do we think about, how we access and what curriculum can we build to support students for making sure that they can responsibly interact with our technology? technology. I think, lots of studies around its impact on self, how you feel about yourself and suicide rates and other things, mental health, that I think there's another piece here that's kind of missing. I would look at holistically integrating responsible cell phone use. My kids are not 16, they're young, and they're not getting cell phones. You're hearing me at home until you're 16. So we're definitely pretty strict about our thoughts around cell phone use with my kids, because they're already at their ages inundated with social media and other things and other capacities, that I don't want that for them at a very early stage. But I think the consistency is my main thing. The only thing that I've heard from parents is, and I also share the same concern, is if there's an emergency situation, having direct, immediate access to my kid, knowing where they're located, what is that process? We've got those processes, so alongside whatever we develop for consistency across, we're sharing, these are our policies for this situation, et cetera, to make sure that our families know, and that's not an additional question that comes to us.
That's actually something that came up during our reunification training a couple weeks ago. We were running through that drill, and we sat back and thought, like, okay, what we haven't thought about now is, like, we have these, depending on the school evacuation, we have these hundreds or whatever amount of students. They're not all probably going to be texting their parents and family, like, okay, I'm here, this is what I'm doing. And how do we deal with that while trying to reunify families in case there's like a water main break or gas leak or something that led to a school evacuation? So yeah, those are things that we're gonna have to think about from like a safety and security standpoint too.
Setting aside the issue of like a communication during an emergency, I think, and I'll include myself in this, parents need to like do a better job of not defaulting to what's easier. I communicate with my kid when she's at high school via her cell phone because it's so easy and convenient. And enforcing a policy that's best for the district, best for all the students, best for the teachers will mean that we may not be able to have that easy, convenient, direct access communication with our kids, and that's okay. If you need to reach your kids, like Dr. Clarity said, there is a way to reach your kids, to reach the school, to talk to someone at the school. And it's the same way that all of our parents reached all of us when we were in school. That method still exists.
Yeah, that was gonna be my piece, is we look for things to define emergency also. It's right, what a family may constitute as an emergency, thinking about what we really need for access becomes an interesting layer. And that isn't to diminish something that is legitimate concern in needing to contact your child, but that gray area where we've gotten very convenient.
And I also think that the data shows that, sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I was saying the data showed that having devices actually slowed the ability for children in emergency to listen to instructions on where to go and what to do, because they're so worried of getting on the phone, contacting somebody. So I don't know if the data is going to show that this actually leads to safer outcomes when it comes to an emergency happening. So I think that's sharing that data so parents realize, like, is this really making your child safe the way you think, or is it more of a, this is easy and I feel like I had the illusion of control given an emergency if my child has constant access and a way to communicate. Because I myself, my kids have an Apple Watch and I communicate throughout the day sometimes, but I'm ready to stop that. If it means better, attention in the classroom and a district-wide policy that takes the burden off the teachers and makes everything easier, I'm willing to deal with that, as Joe mentioned.
I think that's an interesting, when you were doing that, I realized, what is, our devices are on our wrists too. What does away mean in that situation?
And does it capture the watches, right? Because they're not phones. There's no social media, so it doesn't break our social media rule, but it is a
You can
messaging, texting, calling device.
Yeah,
So
so
that's the capture that.
Yeah, alerting, just notifications, yeah.
that was something that came up in the meeting with principals too, is like that the list of devices needs to be longer, because principals and building leaders are seeing students or running into students talking to their watches, or they might have like angel sense detectors that allow like families to kind of drop in and listen. So they really want us to like think deeply and hard about the wireless communication devices that end up on the ban list.
Just to put it into like real perspective now, like just seeing what's happening in Minnesota, like wanting extra layers of security even for my family. And, those are layers of security that, it's hard for us to have a broad sense. We've got our policies and procedures, but what else have we not thought of? Where we want our students that may be at higher risk for being picked up in extreme cases, that they're coming to school because they have another layer of safety that they can communicate. So I don't want to lose sight of that reality of now, because I know that that's, I'll just put it out there, that we add that to the list of our considerations and what we consider, we want to bring kids to school, want them to be safe here. We want their families to feel that their kids are safe here. And we have to just expand our ideas of what we consider ourselves safe with that lens as well.
What do you mean by adding that as a list, as an emergency?
I just think if there are families who are being targeted by ICE because they're immigrant or refugee or whatever, and they're not coming to school because of that reason, that fear of being separated from their family. And today, if we can add extra layers of security for them, whatever that can be, that they're safe in school, I just want to think about that too, because I think that's a reality. We can't look past that. I think that's happening right now. And so we just have to make sure that that is within our realm of thought.
When there's like the discussion about progressive discipline for violations, what does that kind of look like?
Yeah, so that came up amongst our principals in a sense that just having your cell phone out is kind of seen as just like a level 1 violation. It's something that's handled at the classroom. And really those level 2, 3, and 4 violations come in when you start talking about what is the student actually doing with the cell phone. So reviewing those and seeing whether those are actually aligned with what they want them to be, and whether there should be a situation in which repeated level 1 violation actually becomes a higher up code violation in that sense. But currently the progressive response model talks about like, okay, is the student using this to cheat? It goes here as a 3, or they're using it to send a meme to their friend and they're just being off task. It might be a 1 or a 2. So just kind of fleshing those out with this new ban to make sure we're not putting, I think I was mentioned earlier, like all of the enforcement on the teacher specifically, and that some of it is also dealt with through building administration and reinforcement.
Like in general, this feels like a great example of our inverted pyramid. And I think I heard this from the start of like the input of families, students, and staff matters so much to me. This is certainly one example where as a board member, yep, we will craft these policies and do the things that our board needs to do. But I absolutely want the insights from the folks that are at the ground level doing this and the buy-in. Having your student advisor, I think, is so powerful for this, and having student input. So the buy-in is really reciprocal, that it doesn't feel like something happening to our students, but in partnership with our students.
Who are teachers?
Yeah, exactly. But I do think the consistency, all the things that people have elevated are really important. I think I'll just share one little other philosophical piece that I think you kind of touched on too, of like the relationship with devices. I know that's something in parenting world, it's really easy to just take the device, but then kids aren't learning how to have relationships with their devices. And I would argue most of us adults have had to learn how to have a relationship with our device too. How do you feel when you look at it for 15 minutes? Do you feel bad about yourself when you're done? What are you doing? And just understanding to self-monitor as well, because that's really the reality. We can do these sort of more punitive things and put guardrails and rules and take things. But if we think about creating global citizens beyond our walls, how can we help support students to just really know and understand how they engage with their device as kind of part of our just global approach to technology. So, yeah.
So I agree with that. I was going to say, we haven't really talked about what role a school should play, but you kind of hit on it there. Like there's a definite role you played there about what responsible device use looks like. I'm not sure what that is, but there's a definite role there.
I feel like the adults need to be partners with that too, right? As a teacher, I wouldn't be able to teach how to have a good relationship with my phone. Let's do the journey together. I mean, right, if we create that partnership with adults too.
I wonder what, do you know what we're currently doing as far as like, I know that's Jason Rubo's world with responsible use and sharing information and literacy on responsible use with parents. I've gotten little pagers home of like, hey, these are best practices with iPads at home. What are we doing for other devices?
Yeah, it's moving a lot faster with AI, because now we're working through two lenses, and I just want to put this in a space that Jen mentioned. I'll just go a little bit deeper in terms of with the rapid implementation of AI into our world, the usage of a device with almost trying to replicate humanistic qualities is a factor that we need to do a lot more teaching about, in terms of almost replacing human interaction with device interaction, and forsaking actually kind of the peer-to-peer world, almost training that device to be your go-to person instead of a person itself. So
Right.
I've learned that more from the student voices in the spaces of,
Right.
Creating emoji, training someone, actually, having someone that's speaking to you, talking to you, giving you think it's giving you advice, but it's an algorithm. Those type of things that's happening now.
Yeah.
And so it's not just a fact of, okay, putting the device away. There's also how we are engaging with technology. That's a different shift in not just in the education system, just around society. So both need to be true. To your point, so I just think we can't get caught in a world of just putting a phone away is going to be enough to deal with the rapid change of technology facing our students right now. Correct.
I have two comments real quick. Just first of all, how many of us have our phone sitting next to us?
All of us, I think. Yeah.
Literally everyone.
Yeah, too.
Yep.
You have to
Watch. Yeah.
So I guess my point is, if we're gonna grant the cell phone policy, it has to be one that the adults actually abide by too. I mean, because there's really just no point in saying, this is what you should do, and we're gonna do something different because I feel like that feels a little bit hypocritical. And
Yeah.
granted, maybe as the superintendent, you actually do have emergencies that do have to be addressed immediately. You might get the pass. But,
As
sitting
do
at the
I'll
board
put
table,
mine
I'm
away
pretty
too.
sure I don't.
Yeah.
So that would just be something I would like to point out. The other thing, just reading about willpower versus environmental modification, and that willpower is just a constant drain, and really is not something that you're not setting yourself up for success if it's relying on willpower. You're actually just causing yourself stress. Environmental modification is the way to enact that. So I would put it out there. If we're just saying, just don't check, just don't do anything, is not a great recipe for success. And I myself, so as I just don't check, I would like to modify environment as opposed to just don't check it.
Yeah.
So like the piece of chocolate there, willpower is really hard when the chocolate is sitting there. Modify the environment and have Laura keep it in her bag. Yeah, that's really poignant though. I mean, not to make a trite, example out of something bigger, but I mean, that's really interesting. Yeah.
We use magnetic pouches in the high school.
There are pouches available that are not consistent classroom to classroom. So I think that's where,
Yeah.
And it's not any fault of any staff member at all. It's just that has been an expectation. So I just think we're trying to get to the space of consistency of once we decide what that is. So thinking about the conversation, and I just want to make sure that our steps are correct, that we like to bring an administrative rule back to the board and then codify that rule as a policy under OE10, just so we have the connection to match the legislative requirements. As a step for us.
Yeah.
Only other thing I'd add to the discussion that we haven't brought up yet is this is not a unique problem to us. It's not a unique problem to Wisconsin. And I know, because I've read about them, that there are districts that have kind of done novel things and have had big time successes surrounding device usage in their schools, that maybe it would be useful, and I'm sure you've done this or are planning on doing it, but to do some kind of case studies of what some other sites have done and see what we can learn, so we don't have to feel like we're inventing the wheel.
Yeah. Well, that's what districts have implemented this.
I think this also came up when we were talking about our results policies, that there's a pedagogical component as well. It has nothing to do with the board really. But, you know, there's the Act 42 compliance component, but then there's like an ongoing, like, how are we talking and teaching about this in the age of ubiquitous devices and AI that, you know, our curriculum hasn't necessarily caught up to it yet. I don't know if it ever can. AI moves pretty quick. So.
Hope that was helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you for the prompts and the information.
It'd be really interesting to hear feedback from, you know, staff and students and building leaders. And I've heard this was going to be great to hear how everyone else wants to come at this. So, thank
For
you.
sure. Decent part about this, we have a little bit of time. July 1st isn't right around the corner, but it would creep up on us, so.
So I would also encourage if we are going to do any stakeholder engagement or feedback around it, that we think outside of our normal channels, like as explaining families that might be impacted that we may have not thought of.
Right. Dr. Kennedy, correct me if I'm wrong, did you already ask the staff and student advisory, family advisory?
Yes.
Oh, you did, okay.
And the group is motivated, and we can go again, just to make sure, but the student one was only maybe 6 weeks ago, 6 to 8 weeks ago. Yeah. And we flipped the presentation, they actually presented it to the rest of the advisory, so it was student to student discussion. Very good.
Cool.
That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I like that.
Thanks for
Thank you.
your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, board, for the discussion.
Still under me.
Yep, still up. Oh, yeah, no, actually, it's our standalone, our new recent agenda item of just having some budget conversations. So Chad, it looks like we'll get to invite you up. Just doing our part as a board to continue to dialogue around budget impacts locally, statewide, kind of us learning alongside the community to just stay informed about various aspects of school funding and budget and finance. Here you are, Pete. Thought you'd be here too. Yeah, property taxes, yeah, which is gonna be part of our focus this evening. So thanks for being on this ride with us to just take some time as things, you know, continue around budget all the time with our budget team.
He just had to check himself and put his phone.
Yeah, right? Thanks for doing that. Yeah, I know why.
Good to see everybody. We have a very brief budget update actually on the 26-27 budget, mainly coming off that we rolled over the first of the year. So we have an update on CPI. We have some new estimates related to open enrollment after the board recently voted on that. So we're going to do that. And then to Jen's point, we're going to spend a little more time on tax bills and see if the board has questions regarding our update on interpreting your tax bill and kind of all the moving pieces in and out to get to a spot that we, all of us who are property owners are paying property tax bills this time of year. So we've got a 26-27 budget update. That should be very brief. And then a tax bill summary. We'll get into the details. We actually brought forward a couple of actual tax bills. We took names off this evening to go through details on why they differ so much, even in our school district. Then certainly stop me along the way if you've got questions. Pete is here for some technical. We end up with some technical questions related to all the things we're sharing tonight. And we're excited to have this discussion. So the first thing we wanted to do, the board should be familiar with this. We updated our base assumptions for the 26-27 budget year. The main two things that changed on this sheet, and again, these are our biggest drivers for getting to a balanced budget in the fall. We added a line for additional open enrollment seats. I know the board approved 399. We continue to work on conservative assumptions so we don't overpromise and end up actually in a spot tonight. We're going to have to hopefully approve OE5. If Pete, Chad, and Dr. C did the opposite and had aggressive assumptions and all of a sudden tanked a couple budgets, we would be out of compliance on OE5 because we would have more expenditures than revenues. And that is not the case, and we hope to keep it the case. So we added a line for additional open enrollment seats and then ticked down the assumption of 3% on annual cost of living to 2.7. And the board should be very familiar with our 5-year model. We use this almost as our go-to document to set our annual budget, but then also forecast where we see ourselves in the following years, and did update with those new numbers in there, and that, those new numbers primarily the dip in CPI and the added revenue that would come along with an additional 100 students on open enrollment. We essentially took that budget gap down by $1 million, which is good news, but still a place that we need to have ongoing discussions around where we're headed in the fall. But we're still projecting at this point with conservative assumptions that we'd end up in the ballpark of about a $2 million budget gap. And the board can certainly stop me along the way if they have questions related to that. But we did update the numbers on that 5-year forecast. We can go back to this if the board has questions. But yeah, Mr.
I just
Prokop.
have a clarifying question. It's not about next year.
Yep.
So probably just can be put off. But in subsequent years, it seems like the equalization rate is dramatically decreasing. I don't know if you want to speak to that or if that's just we're gonna have to wait and see because state
A lot of
policies.
that will have to do with the assumption of when I'm calculating out how are gonna be receiving equalization aid. In our case here, we're putting in, looks like it's a 5% property value increase. And statewide, it's not going up as fast as we are for property value.
Gotcha.
So we start getting a smaller share of the aid pot in future years. At least that's the way we're seeing things for right now.
And John, we actually brought a state aid history to you tonight in Property Tax 101. And you'll find that our aid we've had ups and downs, but over the last 10 years, it's actually been ticking down because we are a more property-rich school district than other districts compared. Good question. So this was our margin and shortfall summary. This was just a little snapshot. Those are credits and debits related to where we think the budget's going to get the thing balanced in the fall. As a reminder, we ended up with about $1.6 million in new revenue permission. That is from the $325 per student that came out of the last biennial budget. And we didn't get anything else really of consequence. Then we did add the piece around open enrolled students, where if students do decide to open enroll into our school district, that comes with about $11,000 essentially in revenue permission for those students that would come to us. We tweaked the 2.7 from 3, but there are just some big numbers in there. The board just needs to continue to kind of get our arms around. A CPI increase to staff would be a $2 million expenditure in next year's budget. And right now we have only $1.6 million of added revenue permission from the state, taking out the open enrollment piece. Staff or credit for a year of service is another 1.2, almost $1.3 million. I said this morning to Dr. C in cabinet, healthcare is another $700,000. And I can't imagine school districts that haven't, we've had the luxury of a past operating referendum to continue to manage that ongoing expense and look at RFP to bring things back in. But 7% of our existing healthcare contract is another $700,000. And none of that's going into the classroom, right? I guess immediately going into the classroom and then the rest of the related expenses. So that's really how we ended up with that $1.9 million budget gap. And we'll continue to update the board as we get a little later into the spring regarding what's going on with all these budget assumptions. Last slide was this. We just refreshed this slide around things that we are potentially in play as conversations get more serious heading into the spring. But these would be, at this point, the big levers we would have to discuss, and we wouldn't have to do all of these on any of them. But we have and we're going to do some of this depending on retirements, but a retiring staff member that we wouldn't, or a resigning staff member that we wouldn't rehire, it comes along on average with about $87,000 of expense. And I mentioned before, step increase is $1.3 million, CPI is $2 million. We continue to levy, and I do believe this is the right thing to do, but would be a tool the board could tell us, explore. We continue to levy $1 million a year to maintain our facilities. That can be a little bit of a negative feedback loop. If you start to pull that money away from our team to maintain schools, all of a sudden you're looking at a larger capital referendum for things we've been kicking off, windows and roofs and boiler replacements, because we've levied for it, and we're doing it at the right time, not waiting till a roof leaks to the point that it's making everything else inside the building wet. And healthcare continues to be in play. So just having a discussion with Rochelle on that today. We will begin discussions with them in the coming months regarding what that renewal rate is. Right now, it's essentially capped at 7%. We believe with the on-site clinic, we have some leverage to renegotiate and get that at a more palatable number once we head into the fall. Any other questions on a quick 26-27 budget update?
I had a quick one, like clarification question. On the open enrollment and additional seats and adjustments, the 1.2 million, what's that based on?
That's based on $11,900 per
Times how many students? Is that just what we expect to come in through open enrollment?
It was what Chad was saying, it's a per student rate, and we're increasing for an extra 100 students. It was a little over $1,000 per student.
Okay.
But there was also another little, roughly $100,000 adjustment I had to make to start the budgeting cycle on here too. So I just categorized that with the open enrollment, because it was an open enrollment adjustment. I'm making sure my open enrollment numbers were correct.
That makes sense. So then that number can fluctuate based on the actual numbers of students that do open enroll.
Correct.
Could be higher or lower.
Exactly right.
Okay.
Yep, and yeah, we won't know that until the end of June.
Right, so we're choosing 100 as a baseline, 100-ish.
What we would call a conservative assumption.
Got it. Thank you for
That, good question.
Yep.
All right,
Thank
ready
you.
to dive into property tax bills a little bit?
Yes, let's
All right,
educate.
and we're not gonna do a check for understanding with the board at the end, but we will take volunteers. I did this with principals. We model a grocery store interaction where a principal runs into a property taxpayer over at Miller's. They bump carts in the produce section, and they have a kind of off-the-cuff conversation around what's going on with my property taxes. And I had principals attempt to use the terms equalized property value, state aid, mill rate, and taxes in a few sentences that they put together to make sense. So if anyone wants to try at the end, we'll take you. Anyone you want to kind of take one for the team, I'm all in to give feedback related to those interchangeable parts. So we're going to see if we can try to tie that story together tonight with some examples related to property tax bills, because they are on top of mind for many people that are paying property taxes this month and the coming months. So I did stuff into AI a kind of an op-ed that I would consider factual, posted by Dan Rossmiller that WisPolitics pumped out, that the title was literally "What is going on with property taxes in Wisconsin?" I shared it with the board, and this did really end up in 6 main themes. I'm not going to read these to you verbatim, but essentially these 6 big ideas are exactly what's going on with property taxes around the state. We are not alone in the fact that taxes were higher in our school district this last taxing cycle, and we were actually on the lower end relative to the state average. So one, state level decisions are driving local property tax bills, and we're going to get into this in a little more detail, and it's actually, I think, on the next slide. We really are funded from 2 main sources in our school district. We get very little federal funding. So we get money from the state in the form of aid, and then we get money to run our schools from local property taxes. It's about 2/3 to 1/3. So on an annual basis, we get permission per pupil to operate our school district from the state of Wisconsin. We don't get to adjust that. The only way to adjust it is through a referendum. This last year, there were $325 per pupil. That equated to $1.6 million in new monies that we could spend, but no new money went into the state aid pot. So there's only one other source in our school district that comes from local property taxpayers. The board made the decision to dial down how much money we levied to Fund 39, so we could put more in the Fund 10 pot because the state did not give us any additional aid. That is bullet one. So no new money in the state aid pot means everything gets shoved to local property taxpayers. You can have your opinions around why our state lawmakers are doing that, but I do think it can be advantageous at election time to have people mad about their property taxes. And that has happened this year statewide with decisions made at the state level. Two, we've got revenue limits and related to inflation. So we've had 2 years of this idea of the state litigating or passing laws relative to how much we can spend per pupil. 2 decades of this has gone on. There hasn't been a year where our per pupil revenue limit went up with inflation. It's not every other year. It's not once every 5 years. It's not once every 10 years we get a big jump to catch up. 20 years in a row, it hasn't kept up with inflation. And budgets would still be difficult to balance if we just got an inflationary increase, because there are expenses like healthcare outside of our control that are higher than the rate of inflation, and we're not even getting that from the state of Wisconsin. As a result, we've had record high referendum. We've talked about that. State aid has continued to decline related to school funding. We actually just spoke with the board about a month ago on the moving pieces related to voucher schools and essentially taking away state aid and then us backfilling with property taxes. That's a whole other matter. And number 6, a big thing in the Verona Area School District is related to property value assessments. And we're going to get into a little more detail on that this evening. I do encourage the board, if they haven't had a chance, read that article. I think it's very well done. It's 2.5 pages tops, and I think it kind of puts it in good perspective. Again, this is how our school district is funded. About 2/3 and 1/3 state and local property taxpayers. And now we're going to get into a few moving pieces related to equalized property value. That's going to be our big focus tonight. We're going to do in detail a nameless property tax bill from the city of Verona. And we could have done this for the city of Fitchburg or others, and the town of Verona. Those are the 2 places that we've kind of seen the biggest separation in terms of what's happening with property tax bills, and we're going to try to get to the bottom of the why tonight. So on an annual basis, the Department of Revenue during taxing season steps in and applies something called an equalized property value or fair market assessment on an existing property. And the entire reason they do that is to equalize the taxing burden in the state of Wisconsin to support public schools. And the main reason that's important is because municipalities are given local discretion to assess their properties as they wish. So you could see there would be a way to incentivize local municipalities to underassess the value of their properties to try to save the local taxpayers from kind of paying their fair share to support public schools. So the Department of Revenue steps in and they apply an equalized property value. So you're going to actually see on your property tax bills, you have 2 values for the property you own. One is just the flat out assessed value, and that's done from the municipality. That's the value they apply to pay for plowing streets, supporting the parks and other municipal services. And then you'll see a fair market value or equalized property value. That's the one the Department of Revenue applies to make sure you're paying your fair share for public schools and that everything is kind of balanced out. That's the idea of equalized property values. So in a nutshell, and I'll flip through these slides, the way this works is if you live in a municipality that had 50 homes, 50 homes and businesses or pieces of land that sold the year before, and they sold for an average of $700,000. The Department of Revenue says, all right, they sold these 50 properties, what were their values in terms of assessed value, and come back, and the Department of Revenue is like, $500,000 average assessed value on these properties by your local municipality. Meaning, in their eyes, you have undervalued that property by $200,000. In turn, they apply a ratio to everyone in that municipality that owns a property. even if you didn't sell it. It is their way to have the best guess for what the thing's actually worth in the event you sold it, not what it's assessed for. And it's supposed to equalize the taxing burden for municipalities. And stop me if you guys have questions, but you can see if you have a property that is fairly assessed, which is kind of where the city of Verona is sitting right now, versus a property in the township, which is way under assessed, the Department of Revenue comes pecking on an annual basis to say, you under-assessed your properties, we need to step in and raise your equalized property value. And that's what we're going to get into tonight. That's gone on. We have multiple municipalities in our school district, and that has not been an equal number the last 4 or 5 years. And some people are really feeling it. I wish we could control it, but we can't. So a few key terms, I'm not going to read all these to you. I did want to make sure we concentrated on equalized property, equalized value and fair market value tonight. Improvements come into play if you put in an addition or other things. And I think for the most part, our board members are aware of levy and mill rate. We wanted to get into a little more detail. This is actually a version of this is in our annual budget book. So here's our equalized property value history in our school district. Pete went in and color coded this, and everything that's green is above the average increase on that annual basis. Everything that's red means it's a little bit lower than it was the year before. So if you follow me, if we just take a look at 25, 26, and we go down and we take a look at the city of Fitchburg all the way to Verona, the average equalized property value increase that year was 9.23%, meaning the Department of Revenue thought on average our properties were undervalued by 9.23% when they applied it to all of our municipalities. But you can see there were some municipalities, Montrose or the city of Verona, that were well below that 9.23, and our friends in the town of Verona really got hit by the Department of Revenue this year. They applied a 21% ratio, saying that that's how much the town was underassessed. I also want us to look at what has happened in the township the last 3 years. The Department of Revenue has applied 16, 17, and 21% to the property values in the township 3 consecutive years. So what that means is slowly but surely, the taxing burden in terms of where people live and how much they pay of our levy has been shifting to the town of Verona. And the main reason that has happened is that the Department of Revenue believes properties are underassessed and they're worth more than they are assessed for, and they're applying that ratio so folks in the town have to pay more property taxes for public schools. And we're going to get into details on what that means to the tax bills next. So we pulled a couple of tax bills. We pulled names off them, but you may know a neighbor that has a tax bill like this. And what we did is we actually teased apart 3 consecutive years of tax bills and pulled the most crucial information off each of those tax bills as kind of a show and tell in terms of what happened with equalized property value. So here we have a resident in the city of Verona, and you can see kind of from top to bottom the value of the land, the improvement, which is typically the home, the total value, the average assessment ratio, and that gets into that fair market value. And then we bolded the 5th line down, the estimated fair market value of that home. That is the value our mill rate is applied to when you figure out how much you're paying in property taxes. Then down the way, you've got county taxes, local taxes, the school taxes, and Madison College. You can deduct lottery credits, first dollar credit, and so forth. And in the end, on that kind of second to last line, your total tax bill, when it comes to what we're end up paying, this resident over a 3-year period of time had a 7.24% increase in their overall property tax bill. which, this is just my editorial comment, in a very high inflationary market, I actually consider this to be very reasonable that property taxes were not coming anywhere close to keeping up with inflation, meaning at least for this resident, something was working, 7% over 3 years. And we layered in an 8% inflation there 3 years ago. Questions on details in that property tax, that bill?
So the assessment ratio for 2025, so the fourth line down, the 0.9509. So when that gets applied to give the estimated fair market value, that fair market value that the DOR is coming in to adjust, that only impacts the school levy, or does that impact any other aspect of the bill? That is only to remedy the fact that they're not covering the school portion.
Right.
So it does look like VASD has taken a huge chunk because that is directly, the equalization is to match that specific component of the bill.
Right. Because, stay with me here one step further, municipalities can do this. If they underassess a property in all of their properties, but they still know what their annual expenses are, they can just apply a higher mill rate to that underassessed property to make up for what that costs. So their assessed values mean less than it does to us, because we're backing into that number from a levy that is restricted by revenue limits.
So
Yeah,
a town of Verona that has been
doesn't-
undervaluing properties for years,
Yep.
the hammer comes down directly to schools,
It does.
basically. So yeah, that helps with the perception piece. Not that perception isn't reality, but the way that where the source of the issue comes and then where it lands, that does feel really icky.
It does.
That it does kind of land on our
And
backs
it's
despite.
super complicated stuff.
Yeah,
So it's hard for most people when they're only dealing with this once a year to really get your mind around it.
and to your point, we've tried to navigate our mill rate in trying to anticipate some of this for our taxpayers, knowing that this is a reality, that assessed values don't always match up. But I mean, when you talk about something like you're about to talk about, I think with that big, that's really hard to anticipate on our end with a mill rate.
Lots of anomalies to try to control for and educate on. Yes. Let's go to them, and we're gonna tie this all together, I think, with some of the work we've done over the last couple of years. Property tax payer 2 lives in the town. This person's estimated fair market value over the last 3 years has gone up 31.34%. That is that equalized property value, and that is a big driver of what happens with overall taxes. So as you can see, this person's Dane County taxes went up 9%. Local taxes actually shrunk a little bit, but that VASD tax went up 14.75%, double what the other person in the city of Verona's property taxes were, living in the same house, and I don't think had a bunch of improvements done to it. This is very common for folks who live in the township, and ended up in the end having a total tax bill that went up 24% over 3 years versus 7. So I think I'm seeing lots of head nods with the fact that the main driver of this big discrepancy is assessment related to fair market value, and us having to apply our levy backing into a mill rate to the number we use is equalized property value. It's not assessed value, and that is not a number we can control household by household. We control the overall levy and apply essentially the $7 billion of property tax, the property value into what we have for a levy. So I'm hoping that all makes sense in terms of why those are heading apart. This is a new one for us. I had Pete pull this just for comparison's sake. So we decided to go in and I knew we'd look good because of the fact that we've been dialing back what we're doing with prepayment on debt to manage taxes in our school district. But over the last 3 years, the statewide average in terms of their levy, what they're asking taxpayers to pay to support schools is about 14%. In Dane County, there are only 2 school districts that are below the statewide average. One in Key, actually one in Key's, I guess, a tick above it, We're the only school district that is below the state average over the last 3 years in terms of increasing our tax levy. So our tax levies increased by under 11%. And you can see other area school districts who have had to manage some of the same challenges we have. A few of those have brought on operating referendum as well. So I hope this shows the board that our work around landing on a levy that makes sense relative to net new construction and using Fund 39 to make sure we can keep that levy in check does matter because we had teased that, kind of brought that back to really the lowest average in the county over the last 3 years. But that doesn't mean that individual people are not feeling big old property tax increases, but it's due to anomalies and abnormalities related to equalized property value. I think John had a question around where we're at with state aid. John, this is good timing. You can see as recently as 10 years ago, we were above 40% in terms of our total annual reimbursement rate from the state when it came to aid. And now we're steadily ticking down as we become a more property-rich school district. And you can see the state's support of public schools, and we're feeling this the last couple of years. Let's say that number was 57 or 58 in the 22 budget. I think that has ticked down a few percentage points over the last couple of years because there hasn't been a significant increase in what's in the state aid pot. I want to include the budget calendar. We've got lots of work ahead of us to do the rest of the spring, and we will get there. We always do. And leave time for questions. If you have it.
I have a just question, out of curiosity, how much are we impacted by school vouchers in the district? Is that a big number, small number?
What was it, $700,000?
Yeah, it was about $750,000 is what our bill would get every year on that.
But
Part of our levy is also.
for us, Juan Carlos, and we're continue to be uniquely positioned, the fact that we over levy in Fund 39 to prepay capital debt, that the pain relative to vouchers is really felt by us lessening the Fund 39 levy and then increasing the local tax levy on the Fund 10 side. So we are not directly passing it on to our local property taxpayers because we have that little bit of give with Fund 39. Many school districts who are not over levying for Fund 39 are forced to pass that on to local property taxpayers. And we do a little exchange there.
So if I live in the town of Verona, and I really would like this situation to stop happening, where do I channel my energy? Because because honestly, right, I think the default is I'm mad at the school district because the line item looks like to be mad at the school district. Not that we're a part of the puzzle, but like, where do I put my energy to have this stop being a problem?
It's complicated. I don't.
Who do I get mad?
Yeah, I'm going to name some factors. I don't think that there's one person or department for you to be mad at. I think a few things are going on. I think the town being underassessed is a factor. But that, if you're underassessed 1 year and that equalized property value is applied, you shouldn't keep getting hit with a hammer. But that's happening in the town. I think there is a large company that is buying empty properties on the west side of our district and potentially overpaying for those because they want them. I think that's a layer. I also know, and I've talked to several property taxpayers that would agree with this, that many of the single-family homes in the town of Verona are sitting on 2 to 5 acre lots. They are close to Epic. They're close to Middleton and the west side of Madison, and they aren't making any more of those in our school district. So they are I think they are kind of a more prized real estate proposition than a standard quarter acre lot in the city of Verona, even though that is still desirable. But the 5 acre lot in the town of Verona that's sitting with 50-year-old oak trees and a 7-minute commute to Epic, or a 15-minute commute into downtown Madison, is highly desirable, meaning people will pay way over assessed value for those properties. I think the last two I mentioned are the two biggest pieces that, I talked to one guy who had questions around his property tax bill, and he's like, my neighbor who's lived in a house for 30 years and has done very little as far as improvements, and he just popped the house on the market for $350,000 over the assessed value that the township gave it, and it sold in a day. Because they're highly desirable, and the township will admit that they're currently under assessed.
Wow.
Go back to the slide that had these nice color coding. Because I think this is an important point. You can go back and listen to any of the board meetings where we've talked about setting the mill rate. We think very carefully and try really hard actually to set the mill rate, to understand that property values are going up, and to try and get a neutral impact on taxpayers by looking at what the average property value increase across our district is, and trying to reduce our mill rate in an amount commensurate to that average increase, to try and keep the average impact like neutral. But what that means is if your property goes up by more than the average, your taxes are going to go up, but there's also going to be people whose property goes up lower than what the average is, and theirs is going to go down. And the hard part is we don't get to set different mill rates for different municipalities. So even though you see this hugely disparate in terms of what's happening with the equalized property value, number one, we don't control that. And number two, we don't get to set different rates for different taxpayers. So the best we can do is try and look at that average impact. And that is something that we pay a lot of attention to and try to do with our mill rate. And you can see our mill rate's been ticking down every year to try and account for the fact that property values are going up.
Exactly right. Well said. Yeah.
So I think we've had conversations like this before. I live in a town, I hate taxes. This is kind of right up my alley. And it makes me mad as hell. It's really one of those things, you get your tax bill, it looks like such a simple thing, but the number of political hands that has to go through before it gets to you is so profound and involves so many arguments that have happened over some years, that disentangling, like, why is it this way and who do I get mad at, is really quite a trick. And it goes, I think this presentation has been great because, as Jen was asking that, I laughed because I'm like, yeah, I'm mad as hell. Who do I get angry at? And it is like, yeah, I mean, people are paying a lot of money for big lots of land in the town. I get that. The Department of Revenue is jacking us 3 years in a row. I don't like that. I'm mad about that. State legislature is sitting on $1.3 billion. They've overtaxed the entire state of Wisconsin. I'm mad about that. Like, there's a lot of places to be mad. By the time you get to the schools, your anger is so misdirected when you look at like how we're trying to keep it down. But when I get that bill and it's gone up some 30% in the last 3 years, and we're looking at a budget where we've got to make cuts, it is kind of a what the hell is going on situation here. And you do have to do some digging. Like, don't listen to me. Everybody should do their own digging. Do some digging, because this ain't right. And it's not right across the whole state. All these districts are going to have to go to referendum and explain to their communities why they're asking for more money. And at some point, you're like, the state's got a lot of money. We're all asking for more money. People are getting taxed more. Something in the system ain't working right.
Yeah.
So this has been a great presentation.
And you bring up a good point. The irony, John, is, and you're right, and if and when we end up in a position we have to explain this to all of our taxpayers again, how is it possible that taxes are through the roof and you guys are running out of money? That's going to be the conversation we're going to have. And it sits just down the road at the Capitol, and you are correct, $1.3 billion of even half of that put into the state aid pot would have provided an immense amount of property tax relief. And we'll continue to reiterate and how important it is that we need an annual increase in line with inflation to run our schools. And then we got a 1.7% increase in terms of our per pupil revenue limit this year. Inflation is almost 3%. So do the math on that. It's rinse and repeat. That's why school districts are back to the referendum box every 4 or 5 years, because you're running out of per pupil revenue permission because it's not keeping pace with inflation.
I think one of the things that I've seen before when we've done these budget presentations is when you look at the district, something like, you can correct me, but like 85% of our expenses are to do with salary and benefits,
Right.
whether it's health benefits or other. So when we talk about the state not inflation adjusting aid, and when we have conversations about like, we're just trying to give CPI inflation-based pay raises so that our staff can make the same amount of money year over year. Like, there's like 15% that's like our maintaining our buildings and that. There's not another lever in our budget. It's not like, I've run businesses where like 30 to 40% of my budget is staff. And the rest, I could mess around with my supply chain a little bit.
Right.
That's not how schools work. Like, this is people. And so when the state is like no inflation adjustments for the past, I think since 2010 for sure, like the bill's coming due, and it's coming due on my house, and I'm pissed.
Yep.
And that's fine. Like, I'll deal with it, but yeah,
Thanks for that, Mr. Pro.
good work.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for that.
I think another slide, just to, re-emphasize that was really important in this, was that yes, our tax levy is increasing, but it's increasing in an amount well under state average. Like everyone else in the state, their levies are going up by a whole lot more than ours is going up, both in this county and statewide. So I think that's a good slide that shows, again, that we're trying really hard to keep the burden on taxpayers in mind when we're setting our mill rates and setting our levy.
Agreed. Right. And this is a privilege that we have right now that a lot of districts don't. And, I just think that somehow we have to find them. I'm just going to say something on my soapbox. Somehow we have to find a way to get people to really convince the state to release more money and give it back to the schools and start playing catch up a little bit, because I'm glad that we're showing great numbers and not increasing taxes, but that doesn't solve the problem for us or anybody else going through this.
And just so everyone's aware, the revenue limit used to be indexed to inflation.
Right.
Where it automatically increased commensurate with inflation. They made an explicit decision not to do that anymore.
And isn't the budget surplus of the state almost the same as it would be isn't it the same or close to being the same as the money that they've held back from giving schools?
Yeah, it'd be darn close, I think. Yeah.
That's like 2 years ago when they had like $7 billion, it was pretty
It's
much.
like almost to the T. Yeah, and so we basically just shifted that away and created a lot of chaos for school budgets, for something that's so important for our future. Sorry, thank you for listening to my little soapbox moment.
It's easy to be frustrated.
The voucher expense last year was $720,000. This year, it's $879,000, so about $150,000. So just to answer your question.
Yeah.
Maybe that will be one of our next topics, is explaining how that whole process works. This is really helpful. And thank you, board and team, for just letting this be a part of what we're elevating at the board table, because it's so real for people and it's so complex and it's an ongoing problem, thanks to all the things we elevated here.
And I think we have at least 2 board members in the town. Thank you for continuing to stay with us. You at least haven't been one of my poison pen letters in terms of what's going on. So thank you.
Right.
Yes. The box is always open.
Thank you, team.
Thanks, guys.
All right, moving on to our agenda, public comment. We do have a public comment this evening from Kilby Willenberg, if I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah.
You're welcome to speak from there. You're welcome to come to the table wherever you're more comfortable. Yeah, wherever you're more comfortable.
So this is in regards to the letter, the email that you guys received on Friday from my lawyer about the hockey suspension.
Just being mindful with public comment about,
Right.
yeah, what's
So
okay.
I'm just making sure that if this is not a forum for this, that this is a sensitive area, I want to be privy to that. All of us do.
Right, I mean, we can't share private information about staff, any individuals, so if there's a comment that can be shared with generalities, we're happy to
Sure.
hear it.
Sure.
But being really mindful about the sensitivity of the situation.
No doubt. And so in that letter, that was perhaps, bringing a lawyer into that subject with the hockey suspension. Just want to know that's kind of a time-sensitive thing, and I hope that this is taken serious. Because we don't want to go down that path, but we're definitely prepared to do so. Just because of the sensitivity of the kids that were involved and how this all came about. Just a little bit of background on that program, the hockey program. The items at stake there has been something that's involved in that program for probably through a couple coaching staffs what's been told to us. And it's something that program or that tradition, I guess, that's been known from the coaches and they participated in. And to throw the book at 5 kids, my kid being one of them, and the reason that he was suspended, what they told us is because his name came up. And so I don't recall that ever being something that's a discipline to that nature for a kid who's never been in trouble a day in his life to have 50% of the season taken away from them because his name was involved. When every kid in that varsity program participated, right? And so what I brought up to the administration, the people who were the detective, the judge, the jury, and part of the appeals process, which seems highly unfair, is that there hasn't been one adult that's in charge of those kids or even above that, at that level, that took any responsibility, even though they knew about this and participated in it. And so that's why the nature of that letter was sent. And so since my kid has already been suspended for the remaining of the season, 50% of the season for something that we were told because his name came up, we were taking that very serious. And this is not really about him being back on the ice, because we have to decide that as a group, if that's a safe environment for them to be back in there. I'm not playing my kids being the victim, but whenever he's being threatened by those people who are directly in charge of him, it doesn't sit well with us. Okay. And so I'm trying to do my best to be general here. And I'm happy to take this offline, off record, if we have to. But I just want you guys to know that the letter that was sent out, we're taking it very serious. We don't want to go down that road, but we absolutely will, just because this is going to follow our kids around. And it would have been one thing if we were told what they did specifically, but we haven't. We asked and we asked and we asked. And this doesn't fit with the consistency of the punishment that's been around the other programs. For instance, in football, which you all probably realize what happened there, the smoking marijuana on a bus and got 1 game. There's another hockey suspension that happened this year for threats to a person about what happened to that person of sexual nature, and they got suspended. And then there's some other basketball stuff that happened, and nothing happened. So this doesn't fit at all. And I can tell you as a group here, and as a community, there's a lot of outrage. And so that's all, but I'm happy to have another conversation if we need to. But I highly encourage you, from my kid's standpoint, and my standpoint, and from the community aspect, as this has already been brought up in the public, which we've all seen on our phones, and various news outlets, that people are watching. That's not a threat, I'm just saying. So I appreciate your guys' time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I believe that's our only public comment this evening. So then we'll move on to, say that? Oh, no. Thank you. Just making sure, I only had the one public comment, so I just wanted to make sure that you were the only one speaking. Yeah, thank you. moving on to board action, OE5. So I believe that may be Chad again joining us for OE5, financial planning.
Forgot that they dovetail right.
Right, I know. Normally you just get to kind of stay.
I think this will be relatively brief.
Well, I think we talk about this every year because even just what we did just talk about, that we live OE5 so frequently.
It'll
with
be
the team.
evidence for you guys next year.
Yeah,
Yes.
which is super, appreciative, love the evidence. So, yeah, turn it over to you.
I'll give you my 30 seconds on what OE5 is. Make sure the board is aware of budget assumptions, not just on an annual basis, but on a 5-year kind of rolling forecast that I think are very good at in the school district. Make sure that we do not budget for having more expenditures than revenues on an annual basis. Make sure we have enough fund balance to be in line with your board policy. Those are the biggest pieces of OE5. So it's not kind of the day-to-day ins and outs that we do related to OE6. OE5 is more around long-range fiscal management of our annual budget, fund balance, and making sure that I think we're essentially budgeting on a responsible basis to put the school district in a sound financial position. So we've provided evidence in line with that policy, and I'm here to answer questions if you have any.
Thank you. And I forgot to say thank you to Corby for being our note taker tonight on what may be, again, a fairly straightforward monitoring discussion.
Despite being a town of resident person, I am grateful for all the planning that you do, and I appreciate surprise. So it seems like the opportunity to say thank you despite the pain of writing my check.
I also appreciate it. Not as a non-numbers person, and especially tonight, a good example of really explaining very clearly, this is all the definitions and the metrics on the levers of the process. And doesn't mean I still know it, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
The transparency is so helpful. I mean, as we have these conversations about trying to line item and go to the cent, to the dollar, that anyone in the community can click on these links and really get a sense of our long-range planning financially as a district, I think is really impactful. That it's beyond meaningful for us as board members, but truly for anyone that wants to continue to stay apprised that how transparent you all are, just helps us do our role, and I think helps the community really understand that we're not hiding anything, that everything is transparent, doing the best that we can.
Absolutely. And having Pete on our team is such a valuable asset to continue to be able to share with you guys how those budget assumptions actually lay out over the next 5 years in an understandable way is invaluable. So it's big time to have a skilled person like Pete to be able to put it all together.
When we go to state convention, that gets elevated as a solid reminder that this team is exceptional at this work, and it helps us do our work, which is amazing.
Yes, having this operational expectation reminded me of like the board's rightful place in making sure that there's transparency in the community about how our resources are being spent. If we're gonna pay taxes, like I wanna know how and where and why it's going there, and having these repeated conversations like the one you just did, explaining this is how it all works. And then when we do have the budget discussion, explaining like where things go and how we're not only balancing it, but budgeting long-term so that we're not playing catch up on interest rates or anything like that. We're actually ahead of the curve, is actually a pretty rare thing. The more and more I talk to other districts, and that's surprising to me because this seems to be an absolutely crucial function.
To Pete's credit, we've been talking about if most of these assumptions held close to true, after we passed the 2022 referendum, we told the board and the community, if state finances stay the same, we've got 4 or 5 years before we're doing this again. And our 5-year models have essentially stayed true to that. And here we are. So I hope it certainly has not been a surprise to our current school board members that we're having difficult budget conversations for 26, 27. And I hope, the evidence with the fact that we we're back to you 3 or 4 times a year, many times more discussing this. It's also not a surprise for folks who follow the district a little more closely.
I will add that one of the reasons that the state used to inflation adjust its state aid is so that you didn't have to go to referendum as often. And it turns out that it's really expensive to do that. Just in terms of taking up people's time, they could be focused on providing education, in terms of making sure that we're communicating adequately with the community. And that's across every school district that has to do it. So the amount of expense that's lost just because we're not inflation adjusting things doesn't change inflation at all. Inflation happens no matter what. But the amount of extra cost that has to go into it because the state doesn't do that is mind-boggling to me. Anyway, that was an aside. But
Important.
as things come into my head, I'm gonna say them.
Any other comments or questions about OE5? I would accept a motion to come up with a conclusion about the report as to meeting expectations or not meeting expectations.
Meets expectations.
So motion by Christopher to approve the report as meeting expectations. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, John. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving OE5 monitoring report as meeting expectations signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, OE5 is approved. Thank you again.
Thanks, everybody.
Pete as well for all of your time, just ongoing.
Thank you.
Super appreciative.
Sorry, the word is not that it's expensive for referendums, it's taxing. That's the word.
It's both, yeah.
It does.
It's both. It does have a cost attached to it, right? The cost of human energy. Yeah. OE8, any general planning updates? You know, we all got to celebrate a bit at WASB last week. Appreciative to all of you that were able to make some time to the WASDA luncheon to give the recognition again to Dr. Clarity for Superintendent of the Year and other attendance delegates. Thank you, Corby, for
Yes.
serving as our delegate. Was there anything you wanted to just share from that experience this year?
Yes, this year, I always go into that space prepared to fight. And
Which we
this
appreciate.
year, it was very different. And it was very evident that what's going on at Capitol Hill has drastically affected school districts statewide. Because most of the stuff that was voted on as far as resolutions were things that school districts shared together as a problem. And it was so powerful and moving to hear, and you were there, to hear the things that were presented, where districts were saying from, I don't care, from Eau Claire to Milwaukee, that they were having the same issues. And talking with some of the school board representatives during the event was very moving, just to hear some of the things that they're dealing with, such as like state funding for school lunches. That came up, and that was passed as a resolution. Surplus for various things. I'll keep that under wraps until that comes out. But yeah, it was different. It was different this year. You can tell that those executive orders have impacted the state as a whole, and funding is an issue. And every school district, referendums were talked about from district to district to district. And the boards in different districts being upset that they're going back to referendum after only a few years.
I'd say, I had particular focus on looking at upcoming legislation and a particular interest of Title IX and limitations towards our transgender community and youth. And those sessions, me on the opposite end, I was furious of, you know, our population of trans kids is very small, and yet we're putting so much focus and energy on continuing to limit access for those kids. In particular, around sports, not a lot of focus on trans boys, but a lot of focus on trans girls, misogynistic in nature, and that's the center of that focus. And then continuing to look on the legislative agenda for right now, looking at the pronoun and name requests from our youth, and trying to limit that. I don't think this will pass, but just this onslaught of a community in need that is being targeted, that we need to continue to focus and support and uplift in our community to say that you are valued and needed. Like I said at our last meeting, now with the UW Health taking away gender affirming care, we're seeing at all levels of legislation and other focus on this community that is very in critical need of our support. So, so the opposite end of feeling very positive, and I think I'm hoping that trend will reverse and we'll see changes for our trans community. I just was so angry. And I think part of my anger was not only the direct effect of my own family, because we have trans folks in our family. I'm two-spirit myself, but that the overall kind of audience of our leadership that was in attendance just said, okay, well, there was no pushback. As leaders, it is our responsibility to step up and say, this may be the case, but this is not right. But that was not the case. It was like, thanks for the information. Now we'll go and put into play and keep our overall district safe from litigation. And so that just made me livid. I'll just leave that there, but that was my focus, and I was very disappointed in that part.
There were several resolutions that were shot down that were brought to call a question. But what I was very optimistic about was that those resolutions even existed. Seeing like the DEI resolution even there to be shot down, to me was a huge step forward, because a year ago, it wasn't even there to be shot down. And so there's a shift happening definitely with the thought process, because pen to paper, it's there. And what I'm thinking is gonna happen, what I'm praying and hoping is gonna happen, it was shot down, but it was there. The next time we'll see it and be called the question, and maybe it does get shot down next time, but at least we get to vote for it. And then the time after that, we want it now, but at least we're seeing it there. And that to me is a huge shift. And I truly believe it's because of the environment that we're in and these districts, all of us being affected by it. On a side note, Mama Clarity gives the best hugs. So I needed that. And that was a true blessing. And it was nice to celebrate you.
It's funny where you're going with the mom.
Yeah, that was a lovely added bonus to
Yes.
spend time with
Did we
your
get
family.
a recording of that speech? Because that was great.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
Wazda has a recording. I can ask the team for that.
Is that something you feel comfortable sharing to the
Absolutely.
ASD council?
Yeah.
As I said, there's no
So,
secrets
Just a
about
great
our
message
life.
and a great way to really get to know the person behind superintendent of the year, because that helps tell the human story that's making all this happen, and ties into the staff, administration, everybody who's chipped in to make this. To your point, because you like to give everyone credit.
Yeah.
And are reluctant to accept the well-deserved award, but you did such a great job sharing the collective story. I mean, everybody's got here.
Thank you.
Sorry.
But I do think it's a powerful reminder of like the power of education. That needs to be recentered a little bit. I was gonna talk briefly because I didn't get to talk to you after my last session that I was there. So I walked away also with a sense of hope a little bit. So I went to a session about how a district kind of in northern Wisconsin's been able to close a lot of gaps. So it's a much smaller district than our own. So they have certain advantages. One school district, so every K-12 is in one school. But what was surprising and interesting to me, because it's kind of a center of the road political area, was that they talked about all the practices they had to kind of close these gaps. It made sense. These are not new or radical practices. They've been around for a long time. Teachers have used them forever. I would not like say, oh, we should do this, we should do that, or this is great, or whatever. But what was amazing to me is that everything they did, from the youngest kids on up, started with empathy, teaching and developing empathy. And there's kind of been a little bit of a war on empathy along with DEI, and to see that emerge as like, hey, not only like, this isn't an argument about whether or not it should exist. This is like actual proof of like, this closes gaps because all these kids are learning to understand one another, and they're not at middle and high school ages getting to the point where they're arguing and fighting and devaluing each other so much because they've got that grounding in empathy. And that means you have more mental, emotional faculties available to learn, which was really, really interesting to me. And to be able to put that presentation then in conversation with what you're saying, where, they got us all arguing about all this stuff, and then they took our money. And now people are starting to notice, like, we're arguing about all this stuff over here about people's rights to exist, and they took all the money. And now you're all upset about the money, but we've got to start with that empathy too, and start closing that gap. I ended up on a really high note at the end of it. So yeah, but then it got bitterly cold, and man, that cold is not very good.
Did you come out of that session, right? Because you met me right after my session where I was seating, and then you were a ball of empathy. I'm like, John.
No, that was before this session. I'm normally a ball of empathy, right, Meredith?
Yes.
Yeah, no, that was before that. So I was looking for you afterwards, and I was like,
No, but I saw you and I needed your presence, and that was a very helpful thing.
anytime.
Well, and all of these experiences and all of the emotions that attach to it, just gratitude in general for the ability of our board to be able to attend and take the time and our leaders to be at this conference. It's really impactful for all the ways we get to interact with districts from all over, to be able to talk with one another. It's just a really helpful time. So I was appreciative for all of the investment you all made. And that and yeah, please.
I also, first, I want to thank our full board. To see a team of 7 there together, you just don't see that at a state conference. So thank you all for taking time out of your schedules to be there. And the lady, there was a couple people that were talking to me at the head table. I was trying to, but I was listening, kind of. But can you tell me who's in the room? So I said, well, this is my family, and then Cameron and our full board there. Is there, they're like all 7 members in there? Like, yeah. He's like, and they all speak to each other? I'm like, yeah. Isn't that supposed to be the way that it works? She's like, no. I've never, I'm like, well, in Verona School District, yes, they all speak and have, it's not about always agreeing with one another, but yes, everyone is there for public education. And so if that was an anomaly, I hope that's not the case across our state, but thank you for, I guess what stuck out, Norman, but also I want to give a shout out to the people that helped with the presentation for the advisories. We had 2 students, Faith Rush and Aaron Yarbrough, Melissa Brimmer from GE and Janine Castellanos from VAFI, as well as 2 parents, one from the high school, Rashni, and then elementary parent, Andrea Andri, and gave them time from work, school, or in their classroom to be there. But just a powerful part of the presentation when they were talking about the impact of advisories. So just wanted to publicly thank them for giving me that gift of time and co-presenting on there and just being fabulous. They were all great, and the students just rocked it.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
And I will add to that, I went to another session after that, and a superintendent in that session actually pulled me aside and asked me more questions. That, just spoke to how well they all presented their parts in that.
Yeah.
He was very interested and very motivated. So it was really good to see the follow-up on that. They did a phenomenal job.
Yeah, they were great.
Always great to bring Verona Area School District loud into the voice and the space of the WASBO convention.
Yeah, I did
We
tell
are
the team,
there, we are present.
I did tell the team at Cam, I was like, oh, next year, let's,
Rein it in?
right, yeah, bring it in a little bit and just maybe go into someone else's session, because for the last 2 years, we've,
More learning, less leading.
Yeah.
I think we're 7 presentations in 2 years. We did 3, 4 last year.
Yeah, that big 3.5-hour one, check that one off.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that was fun.
This is what winning looks like.
We can always learn, we can always learn. Anything else anyone wants to add? Any general updates?
I will be speaking on Saturday for the Beyond the Ballot Building Power Through ongoing civic engagements. This is at the Literacy Network, 701 Main Street, Madison, Wisconsin, at 6 p.m. And I'll be one with speaking alongside Donald Dessler, alderperson from Pittsburgh, Joe Maldonado, and Francesca Hall.
Wonderful.
We got some time, it'd be great to see you.
Thanks for the invite. All right, then moving on to superintendent's consent agenda, making sure you've looked that over. Are there any questions?
No questions. I mean,
No.
there's a hard retirement.
Yeah, I know. Are we,
We'll get to
able
celebrate him in time, I'm
Right.
sure.
talk about that?
Oh,
I
sure.
don't think you can talk about
We
it.
can't.
I know.
I try not to, because
Yeah,
I get a lump in my throat.
Yeah.
Every time. So we will highly, highly celebrate that when it goes up, but unfortunately, it's,
Tears of the confetti, that's gonna be.
yeah,
yeah, a lot. He's just sort of remarkable human, remarkable leader and part of our community. And when you give 30 years of service, we got to celebrate that decision to do something else.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
Mr. Bruner is certainly somebody who has impacted so many lives in such a positive way every minute that he's been in this district.
Absolutely.
It's been-
I can't imagine them not here.
Yeah.
It's gonna be weird.
I did want to say that between last meeting and this meeting, we had a Wellness Advisory Committee meeting. And of course, he presented, and he just crushed it, and blew my mind at how much he's done with the local Sugar Creek Health and Wellness Advisory Committee, and how he brought in parents and students and implemented so many beautiful changes that impacted people in such positive ways. And I was like, yes, I can't wait to sit down with you and collaborate. And then literally the next day, I'm like, no.
So you're the
Hey,
reason.
no, 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 I had nothing to
Cannot
do.
work with Walker.
I know, it's my fault. And I emailed Dr. Clark, he's like, how long do we have until June 30th? June 30th, that's it, guys, so get it in.
Yeah,
Check 30.
So I was blown away, and I didn't have a lot of experience with him, right? Because my kids didn't go to Sugar Creek, but that one meeting just blew me away of how much he's done for the district and how much integrity he leads with. So
One of a kind.
Back to his legacy is that basically left behind.
Mhm.
Big shoes to fill. Who's gonna be the next in line? Too early, too early?
We both, we posted it.
Okay,
That's politically correct.
wait, what?
We posted it.
You didn't post it?
Yes, we posted it last week.
I was gonna say Corby's done.
Fine, I'll.
Well, cheers to more celebrations and accolades and time to recognize Mr. Bruner. I look forward to that. So then I'll assume otherwise then
I had
that,
to approve it.
right, that the superintendent's consent agenda is approved as presented?
Oh.
Okay. Looking over the board's consent agenda, are there any questions? Thank you to Juan Carlos for taking our notes on the mathematics monitoring report. Appreciate that. Hearing no questions, board's consent agenda is also approved. Future dates, all the regular board meetings, and just note again, we'll have a closed session on Monday night, February 2nd, standalone closed session, starting at 6 p.m. And it looks like we'll be in the quiet space up here in the library. So some reminders so that stays on your calendar as well.
Question.
Yeah.
Is it a hard stop at 8 or is it 8-ish?
We can decide.
Okay.
So maybe send me a note if you have thoughts about that.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for that. With that, if there are no other future agendas or any other announcements, we'll adjourn to closed session. under Wisconsin statute 19.85 sub 1 sub G to confer with legal counsel concerning strategy to be adopted by the board with respect to litigation, specifically an alleged due process violation. We'll move into closed session with a roll call vote. We'll start with you, Juan Carlos. Yay, yes, or no? Okay. Christopher?
Did it again.
Meredith? John? Corby?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
I am a yes, yay as well. We are adjourned to closed session.